So today's session is going to cover Midnight's CRM module. Today I'm going to show you how to add new customers and contacts, how to edit your existing customers, how to add customer-specific pricing, set your default information that will populate data when setting up a new estimate or a new order. And we're also going to look at the activities chart and calendar and identify where you can go to log anything that you place, such as sales calls or emails, and set up your reminders, either for yourself or for another user. Before we get too carried away in here, though, I'm going to jump into the admin menu. There's quite a few areas in the admin menu that actually populate some of the drop-down lists that you'll see either within the CRM module itself or with the respective subsections like the activities calendar and such. I'll start by looking in our accounting breakout under the postage accounts list. Anytime you create a customer, you have the ability to assign a postage account to that particular customer record. When you assign a postage account, you'll then be able to receive funds for payments that the customer may send you, and you can allocate those funds to one of these particular postage payment accounts that you've assigned. If you assign multiple, then you can pick and choose which account any money gets assigned to. Under contact type, you have the ability to define your contacts. It's that simple. Within the CRM, under any customer entry, you can add your contacts, and then here's where you would simply identify or choose to add to the list of what you'd like to identify any of your contacts as. For this list and for any others, if you need to add a new instance, you can simply type in the bottom gray section anything that you feel as though needs to be added in. And typically, we'll suggest that if you want to remove that, instead of deleting the instance entirely, you just edit the record and uncheck that piece. What that does is it leaves a record in your deactivated list. You won't see this anywhere on any of your dropdowns, but for any of your instances of contacts or customers or anywhere else that you jump into Midnight in and have a data field set for this choice, that record will still be able to show this. If you completely remove it from the system, then the field itself won't have any data tied to it, and it could cause trouble when looking at reports or trying to track data or run searches to pull up specific instances of customers or contacts. Next, under the CRM, we've got the control for your activity types, which are defined as what you'd consider to be either your calls or your emails, actions, anything that you would assign to your team to do. You can give a status code, which allows the calendar to indicate as whether or not something is completed or something is in process. And if you ever want to use a search filter to categorize what you're looking at, either in one of these admin menus or in the contacts list, either in this menu or any others, you'll be able to use this top menu to categorize and sort. Activity types for new actions and for historical actions are all controlled under this list. Next up is our customer types. In here is where you would simply identify your customer type. By default, we have customer, prospect, and reseller as the standard 3. If you'd like to add more in here, you can. And in the customer's primary record under their details tab is where you would assign one of these if necessary. Customer source is intended to allow you to identify how you acquired the particular customer record. And industry allows you to identify what sort of business industry your customer is associated with. Customer type, source, and industry are primarily utilized for data tracking and reporting purposes. They don't have any significant logic in the system other than to allow you to just track and sort data. But you can have your reports set up in such a way where you can run data in either export this out to Excel or be able to use it to track and prepare, say, mass mail information to all the people that need to be included. Under delivery methods, you have control for the ship via, which is a standard option where you can control how it is that your packages are being shipped in general to your customer records. Normally, if you need to ship items back to your customer or vendor, you can define them in here and select them on the fly. Under your estimates and orders list, you have your terms control, and in here is where you would define your net 30, net 10, whatever it is that needs to be specifically built in here can be assigned to either a customer as their default record, and also on the estimates and orders on one-off instances as necessary. If you integrate with an accounting system like QuickBooks or Peachtree, the terms that you define in here reference the code, and when importing a job from Midnight into your alternative accounting software, it will look to the code for your terms to make sure that it's properly assigning that to your internal invoices. So if you're adding these new to the system, just make sure that you're being very attentive in taking a look at either the spacing, formatting, or just naming of any of the particular codes. One big example here is my net 15 and my net 15 with a space. This space will make a difference for your accounting software, so just be careful. The number of days references the due date, and in the export file, this will actually populate out an invoice date for your accounting software to interpret. So make sure that you don't just add the code, but you also plug in the days due. The last main area is way down, is actually in the UDFs or user defined fields section. In this, you can define custom fields for almost all of the core sections of Midnight. Customers list allows you to define up to 30. And here, if you were to add a new field for whatever data tracking that you require, it'd be as simple as editing a row, plugging in the label or what you want your user-defined field to identify, changing and choosing what type of data it would be, for instance, date, uh, just text, integer or decimal, if it's relating to something maybe as a percentage or loyalty discount value. Date, for instance, on perhaps a processing date, time, any of these, but are mandatory, do have to be picked. Lastly, the input mask allows you to choose either text that appears in a container before you type something in, or can be used to simulate a drop-down list, so that way only certain choices can be added. The field size refers to how many characters can fit in a particular cell. So depending on what we put, we'll want to make sure this is set up to allow the amount of text that we're putting into a particular area with a maximum of 255. Again, here, just like the other areas, if you uncheck the active checkbox, it is effectively hidden from your instances of wherever they would appear. And while you can modify these pretty freely to set them up, modifying them after they've been built into the system, that's a delicate operation. You cannot change the field type of a particular customer UDF or any UDF really. The main reason for that being if you have a field reserved to enter, say, a date that you'd like to change to a number or an integer or a text field, the formatting change will cause problems in both reporting, job tracking, and perhaps a couple of other areas. So this is a way to limit any sort of issues that you may run into. Now that the individual areas are done, I'll jump into our global settings. Under here, where I mentioned that you can define your accounting software that you integrate for your terms and the accounting integration container, if you click that, you can select and fill out the core details of your particular accounting program. Under estimates and orders, you can also control some core customer data. From top to bottom, you have the ability to automatically update the CRM info on copy, which effectively means that if you have a job or an estimate that was entered into the system perhaps a while back, and you have since updated the customer record with new information such as new default terms, new shipping and billing addresses, or perhaps a new list of contacts. By checking this, you make it so that information gets updated as you copy the job forward, so you don't accidentally copy ahead the wrong shipping address. The default all new customers to prepay option allows you to do just that when checked. When a customer is marked as prepay, any job that's created for that particular customer will have the prepay checkbox checked on its record. And what this does is it allows you to export a job out from midnight into your respective accounting software before the job is closed. If the job is not marked as prepay, you can mark it on the fly. And if the job itself is not marked as prepay, but you need to export it out, the only way you can do that is to plug in a close date for the job itself. There's also the customer-specific pricing and contract pricing controls. If you have a customer where you've defined specific pricing values, either rates or discounts for specific services, by checking this, you make it so only those particular services within that customer record as redefined by you are available on the particular estimate or order that you've added them to. Enable contract pricing allows you to utilize and build contracts with specific pricing scenarios. And the only services associated with contract pricing can be selected on estimate or order checkbox allows you to do, again, just that, only pick instances of the contract services that have been established with that particular customer. Finally, under the CRM control, you have the ability to set up whether or not an email goes out to anyone internally when a new customer is added to the system. By comma separating, you can add multiple addresses. This is useful for using tandem in with your accounting team. So that way, when you're adding jobs for new customers to your system in Midnight's interface, your accounting team can add the customers to their system in their QuickBooks or other accounting software to make sure that an export process from Midnight and an import process into the accounting package goes as smoothly as possible. The one other area that can be controlled under here and doesn't necessarily relate to specifically customer data, but does share across many areas of Midnight, including customer data, is under the reports list. Under reports, you'll be able to define the default signature for any of your outgoing emails. And the signature that you define in here is company-based. It is not based on any particular user. Additionally, the default BCC is reserved for you to use as an internal emailing server for tracking what goes out of Midnight. And with our recent functionality, you have the ability to assign security-based roles based on your employees' security profile to allow them to see specific reports. I'll be going over this in our reports module training, but as a preliminary bit, if you have this checked, you can assign specific reports to specific security accounts, and underneath their respective modules, they'll either appear or remain hidden. So that's everything under the admin menu. Now to the CRM itself, by clicking CRM, it brings us to the CRM search screen. And this screen lists all of your active customers by default. You'll see active checked is the default search filter. And if you need to adjust this to show inactive or to do a search filter based on specific criteria, you can feel free to utilize the filter to the full advantage. If you check this clear filter options, this removes everything, including the active status, allowing you to seek all customer records regardless of their active status. If you do a search for specific data and you decide that you need to adjust how you sort it back to its original method of sort, for instance, say if you sort by customer code and you want to get the system back into sorting the way it would by default, by clicking the reset filters in the upper right corner, you do just that. Additionally, if you click the extended search button, you get the ability to search by a little bit more information. Your custom-built user-defined fields become available as search filter options. And you can also search by the parent company. And lastly, modify your search screen so that way it displays the contacts of each respective customer. Other useful bits in here are the recently viewed. On the left side of your screen, you'll see this double arrow, where if you click this, the most recently accessed top 10 instances of customer data for your user account will appear here. This carries from computer to computer because it's user-driven. So if you log in at home or on your mobile device, what you see in here is what you'll expect to see on that particular device. And finally, before we jump into customer records and calendar, under our quick links, we're able to set up any type of custom reports that we want to have appear under here, or also utilize these buttons such as activity calendar or add customer to do what we'd like to do from the core front end. In particular, the quick add customer brings up a simple form where you can just fill out some basic information on your particular customer record, such as your name, code, terms and conditions, the tax jurisdiction, etc. Adding a customer this way can also be done within an estimate or within an order. And when done through the estimate or order, it commits that customer to Midnight CRM. If we click the new customer button, this will allow us to add our new customer. Under here, we can set up our new customer with a 20-digit long customer code, which has to be unique for this particular customer record or any other. A default name and address, which can be used for shipping, billing, or both, or neither. A default country, which if you require access to new countries, us here at Virtual Systems can open up a list here for you to give you additional countries as needed. Your definition of a phone number, an email address, website, terms and conditions that you would see under a normal circumstance, the default company, which allows you to recognize your licensee's accounting package to a particular company, and also populate reports such as invoices and estimates with a appropriately decided logo. The create date, which populates itself based on the moment you click the add new customer. The prepay box, which as we identified in the global settings, right now is unchecked and can be checked as needed. And all new customers receive the active status. Let's set up a quick instance on this case. When you're adding new information here too, you can be aware that just tabbing from cell to cell does work. So you do not need to touch your mouse to jump from cell to cell. And in our details section down below is where we can set up the core info that relates more specifically to this particular customer. Everything below the mailer ID, customer reg ID, and exemption number, and above the account warning and tax detail block are identified as what you would consider to be your user-defined fields. They'll appear in tandem order of odds on the left and evens on the right. So we're looking at user-defined field 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So if you'd like to set up your user-defined fields in a way that they display in a specific order, that's how you would determine how it is in which they appear. The info that you see in the spits here, like ghost number, mailer ID, nonprofit, customer reg, and permit number, all have a green plus next to them. What these allow you to do is set up a variety of instances which can be selected on a job. But the data that you plug into the cell that you can see right here in front of us, like this A12345 permit, is what the default will be. So when setting up a new job, the permit number that's referenced will default to this, but also have a drop down made with the availability of any of the other options that you see in here as you populate them. The parent company allows you to assign a overriding company for the purposes of inventory tracking. If you have a customer that has shared inventory among its lower clients, you can do this by selecting a primary. And then now the inventory for Wiesner Chevrolet will be available for ABC Marketing Group and vice versa. The account warning checkbox, when checked for active, will create a pop-up that appears when creating a new estimate or a new order and selecting this particular customer record, with a message that pops up stating exactly what you say here. Something like VIP customer or customer has not paid, no new orders, whatever you feel is necessary. The warning message will not prevent users from being able to create jobs. It's simply a pop-up message that appears when creating a new instance. Also, the tax detail section identifies whether or not a customer is taxable. And when defining the tax jurisdiction, allows you to properly tax any of the taxable services that may appear on a specific job. If a tax jurisdiction needs to be assigned as exempt. You can set the exempt status under the tax exemption container, but in order for QuickBooks or most other accounting programs to recognize properly a exempt status for a particular customer, you'll need to actually set an exempt status in your tax jurisdictions list and then have that tax exempt jurisdiction import into your package. Under the Shipping and Billing tab, you can set up the default shipping and billing locations either quickly by just clicking the Same as Above boxes to pull down the address from the header into the respective section, or by modifying these as necessary. And the admin menu's Ship Via list allows us to populate a default method of shipping if necessary. You can also set up alternative locations, either by manually typing in each location one address at a time, or by doing a bulk upload of a CSV, which, if necessary, feel free to ask us. We're enhancing this now, but I can provide you one that will allow you to utilize and import group addresses for the next 2 weeks before we open that up to the public and make it readily available for everyone. Additionally, there's just a simple notes tab where you can type in up to 35,000 characters of details. The Contacts tab, where you can add new contacts, which can be selected on any contact dropdown within an estimate or order and have their particular address or the one that's defaulted to the customer's record. Oops. Plugged in. The email that's associated with the contact is what will be utilized when emailing anything to your customers out of midnight, for instance, an invoice or perhaps an inventory report or something like that. So be sure the business email is populated correctly. And if necessary, any reports that reference phone numbers will dial the business number as the primary example, and the others will be stored and available on your customer reports, but not visible by default. If you want to set up specific pricing for your customer record, in the pricing tab is where you would select any of your specific services. And where you'll have the service-based price and a minimum price loaded, you can plug in a new price or a discount. You cannot have both. And you can establish a new minimum price if necessary as well. If you'd like to modify a group of services simultaneously, you can use this % discount field to add a new discount to all services that appear on this list. And if you'd like to load every service within your system here, you can click the Load All Services button to place every service separated by page right here under the system. This is a great way to do something quick, such as apply a loyalty discount to a particular customer. Because with just the click of a few buttons, I've now set up every service with its own discount rather than having to go into the customer record on each job and modify them one at a time, or trick our reports into showing that. Lastly, the Copy Pricing to Children button. If you do have child records and this record is one of the parents, for instance, like we have under here, the ABC Marketing Group, if we are in the parent record, we can pass down the pricing modifications to any of the children that we have, and this count of 0 will update to let us know if this particular customer record does have any children. The postage accounts is where we can define, again, which account you associate receiving money to. The open estimates and orders tabs allow you to determine who or what orders are open or even closed. So that way you can see them quickly and also jump into them by clicking the link identified by a highlighted order number or estimate number. The pending and history tabs allow you to identify specific activities such as placing calls, setting up emails, or perhaps scheduling a meeting. If you want to schedule an activity that's already done, you can do it under the History tab. And if you want to schedule a new activity, you can do so under here. This brings you to a new screen in which you can select any of your contact information and specify out more details on the activity itself that you'd like to schedule. I'll jump into a customer that has a few instances so we can see what it looks like. Under our pending tab to see existing activities, these are still considered outstanding and can be completed from here or deleted as necessary. And under the History tab, we can see a list of things that have been done. For instance, if an email has been sent out referencing a specific job, we can actually jump straight to the job, or at least see a record of that email being sent, which included the report. What's important to know is that setting up that BCC in the reports handler of the global settings allows you to actually track the email that goes out. So while it is stating that you emailed the invoice price report for this 40563 job, for instance, you cannot jump in to the record and actually look at the message that was sent. Again, if we want to schedule an activity, it's as simple as clicking this button here, where we pick the contact that we'd like to associate our communication efforts with. We can mark an estimate or order that we're doing the contact attempt with. And any additional information that needs to be carried through, for instance, email or phone number, will populate accordingly. And we can also set up an alert to identify to the specific user in question on a particular date or time that they need to be reminded of the particular activity coming up. As we complete an activity, the completion method is relatively similar. You can either enter the complete record from here, or you can go into the calendar and do it from there. We can see under our open activities list from the CRM, the activity I just selected for myself. And here, just by clicking complete, we can update the status. And if we decide to schedule a follow-up, we can type in our notes, check this box, and when we click Save and Close, then we're brought straight into a new screen where we can schedule a secondary action. Now, if you'd like to have a different view of the activities themselves, under the Open Activities view, you do get to see pretty much everything just in a list of open status. And under the real-time activities, you get a list of either completed or yet outstanding activities with some more information on them. You can, of course, modify your searches in here to see who's doing what. And you can sort these by all clicking the respective category type, either date, result, whatever you'd like to consider your sort method by. Finally, we do have our contract pricing, which I did gloss over. In a particular customer record, if you have contract pricing enabled, you cannot actually modify the contracts themselves from here. You can see the records, but you can't adjust them in this list. You'd create them and assign them to your specific customer records under the contract pricing search screen. And in here, by clicking Add Contract Pricing Instance, we can set up a new contract. We can give it a type and an assumed start date. And we can select specific services, giving specific pricing for each specific service on the contract. And to go one step further, in here you can identify specific rate pricing based on the service, which allows us to override the default that you would have set up in your admin standard services list, or even on your customer's pricing list within their particular record. You can view any estimates or orders that these instances of services and contracts are associated with under the estimates and orders pop-outs here. And when you're inside of a specific estimate or order, if a customer has any activities associated with them or contracts associated with them, you'll see when selecting that a contract pricing button will appear here. This is your message. This is where you'd select your contract. And now if you have the admin selection of being able to only use contract pricing services on a specific job, this is what controls that list. For one last piece of clarity, I'm unable to demonstrate now just because I'm still logged in as myself. I'm the admin user. But if you schedule a activity for a specific customer, contact, or employee, and you have the reminder set up, when that user is jumping around from section to section in Midnight, a pop-up will appear on the screen letting them know details on what it is that they have to do for this specific user or the specific customer or the specific contact. Much like in Outlook, they'll have the pop-out where they can click Dismiss, Snooze, Dismiss All, and they can click into the specific instance of activity to see more details on what it is that they're doing. This pop-up should appear on any screen, but it will only appear if they are logged into Midnight and actually browsing around within Midnight. If they are simply using Google Chrome and they're not exploring Midnight in any way, they won't receive an email or any type of notification somewhere else on their screen that will let them know. So that pretty much covers everything for today's CRM training session. Excuse me while I unmute everyone and we can open up for Q&A.